Welcome back to the Two Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the net as it was released here in the last couple of days. Due to some internet issues, you're seeing this podcast a day later for those of you, we'll call them first-day club members or first-day members. But look, I'm releasing this a day late, and then I'll be out of town. As you're hearing this Thursday, December 7th, I'll be out of town till Monday. So no AP poll for me again, probably. I'll be watching the in-season tournament on Friday night, though. I'll make sure I'm tuning into that. And we'll talk about that down at the end as well, about how I was wrong about the in-season tournament and how I'm willing to admit that. Don't forget, code 2Pointers. SeatGeek is the presenting sponsor of the Two Pointers Podcast. So if you need $20 off your first purchase, SeatGeek.com. You can check it out in the SeatGeek app, or the link in the top of the description will take you there. To look at your deal score to make sure you're getting the right deal SeatGeek provides you with. You also get a view from your seat. Code 2Pointers. Thank you again to SeatGeek for sponsoring the Two Pointers Podcast. So, a couple things. You'll probably start hearing some ads recently throughout the podcast, somewhere in the mid-roll part of it, so 9 minutes or a little bit later. Huge shout out to Buzzsprout Ads for the opportunity there. You would have already heard on last episode, the very first one, which was one of the partners at Buzzsprout. We had a podcast about golf, talking about his albatross over and over again, and his wife just told him to make a podcast. So I'm super excited to be sharing some other really great shows throughout the mid rolls here on the Two Pointers Podcast. So a couple things. Talking about the net, and look, I'm not going to sit up here and tell you and pretend that I am an expert on the net. I'm going to leave that to all of our friends in the bracketology world, specifically people like T3, JBR, guys like that, right? Here's what I want to talk about with the net, right? Look, and I'm going to read through, just for those that don't know what the net is and how it's calculated, I'm going to read through it, and then we're still going to talk about why it maybe doesn't make any sense, but again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm a fan of it or I'm not a fan of it. I actually think it is a good thing, and I think it has a place. I think when it's released to the public and why it starts to count and matter in December is the problem I have with it. So we're going to talk about that today. The college basketball net rankings explained here. This is straight from the NCAA.com's website. They state that the 2023-24 men's basketball season marks the sixth season of the NCAA evaluation tool, or the net rankings, which replaced the RPI prior to the 2018-19 season as the primary sorting tool for evaluating teams. No problems there, it sounds like. In May of 2020, the NCAA announced there will be changes made to the NCAA evaluation tool to increase accuracy and simplify it by reducing a 5-component metric to just 2. Right? So the remaining factors include Team Value Index, which is a result-based feature that rewards teams for beating quality opponents, which I think is really good, right? Which I think is really, really good, particularly away from home, as well as an adjusted net efficiency rating. Okay, so long story short, for example, a given efficiency value, net points per 100 possessions against stronger opposition rates higher than the same efficiency against lesser opponents, right? So basically the quad 1 versus the quad 4 thing, we get that. So what did the RPI calculate, and how is then it different, right? RPI was made up of 3 things: teams winning percentage, average opponents winning percentage, and average opponents winning. It says that twice. Average opponents winning percentage, whatever. Okay. And then the net is a little bit different in that regard. It calculates, again, we talked about the away thing. So talking about the quadrant system, right? Quadrant at home is 1 through 30, neutral is 1 through 50, away is 1 through 75 for a quadrant 1 win, right? And then you have quad 2, and the numbers basically stagger all the way down, and it makes sense there. So, and this is their exact quote on the website: the number of quadrant 1 wins and quadrant 3-4 losses will be incredibly important when it comes time for NCAA tournament selection and seeding, right? So when we think about when the net comes out, right, we are, just over 3 months away from deciding our March Madness tournament. Why do we need a net ranking now? Okay, I know that there's people like Joe Lenardi and the bracketology folks that we've mentioned earlier that need this tool, right? This is something but they're doing their own work and their own research to evaluate how teams are seeded and how they develop their own research. But I think this comes out too early. And I'm not saying that because BYU is number 1 and Houston is behind them. But when you look at the grand scheme of BYU and Houston's record, when you put them head to head, you make the decision whether you think BYU is the better team out of the, as this is currently seeded, this would influence BYU being a 1 seed. And I know that's not exactly how it works. But again, I'm still learning it. I'm still trying to figure out why and why not. That makes sense. So what I'm trying to relay here, BYU both and Houston, both in the Big 12. I've watched BYU beat NC State, and then I also in Houston in person saw Houston twice. So I can tell you I've seen these teams at least enough to figure out a little bit about them. 8-0 for BYU, 9-0 for Houston. And look, this isn't my problem. There's some ones that way down the list that you'll see that are just unheard of. Like, I just don't understand. So they're both 3-0 on neutral sites. So Houston won their tournament. BYU won their tournament a few weeks ago. Both 5-0 at home. And then this is where it gets weird. BYU is 1-0 in Quad 1. Houston is 2-0 in Quad 1. BYU is 2-0 in Quad 2. Houston is 1-0 in Quad 2. BYU is 1-0 in Quad 3. And Houston has no Quad 3 wins or losses. Here's where I think is the determining factor, right? BYU has played the same quality of opponents Houston has in the Quad 1. Or, well, Houston's technically played more. BYU has 4 Quad 4 wins, no losses. Houston has 6 Quad 4 wins and 0 losses. So they're valuing that BYU's played better competition. Like, I just don't understand. And this is where obviously we take other things into consideration when we think about what we think about teams. And obviously for those of you that are bracketology folk, right, you're not going to take the eye test into consideration when you make your resume. But Houston obviously very deserving of their spot near the top. Get down the list here. Purdue and Creighton both with 1 loss at 4 and 5. The top hasn't really changed much. I think it gives a true strength metric for a team like Colorado State. Colorado State was ranked 8th. They're 8th now. They were 7th. They haven't lost a game. They're 9-0. 3-0 neutral. 5-0 at home. Quad 1, 4 Quad 2, 2-2 there. Princeton is 9-0. Okay, I'm well aware of that. Princeton's ranked ahead of 5-3 Tennessee. Tennessee at 5-3 is ranked ahead of Alabama at 6-2. Texas A&M at 7-2. Oklahoma at 8-0. When you look at the difference in Tennessee is 1-3 in Quad 1. Oklahoma is 1-0. So I'm starting to be confused as we go down the list. Indiana State at 7-1 is ranked ahead of Clemson, who I would say has had tougher competition, and the net would agree. 3-0 in Quad 1. Indiana State is 0-1 in Quad 1, and yet they are ranked a spot ahead of Clemson. Clemson, this is recorded on I'm recording this on Thursday, December 7th in the morning. These are through the games that have finished the night before on December 6th. Clemson went up 3 spots after beating South Carolina, undefeated South Carolina, who comes in at 29th in the net. Just nitpicking here as we go down a little bit further. Auburn at 5-2 is ranked ahead of South Carolina. Auburn being 0-2 in Quad 1, South Carolina being 1-1, Nevada being 1-0 behind them as well. Auburn went up spots since their loss to App State. They were 33. They're now 28. Scrolling down a little bit further, you can view this also. Like I said, I'll put the link for the net in the description, whether you want to see it or not. It's going to be there for those of you that do. James Madison, 7-0 in the Sun Belt. They have no Quad 1 wins, and that is because of Michigan State, right? Their big win against Michigan State has adjusted because Michigan State is 4-4 after the loss to Wisconsin. We'll get to where Michigan State is in a minute, but 7-0 Sun Belt, James Madison, shout out to Sun Belt Syndicate, 3-0 in Quad 2 and 4-0 in Quad 4. McNeese, Will Wade coming back here recently for McNeese after his 10-game suspension. They are 4-2. 2-2 on the road, 1-0 neutral, 1-0 at home. No Quad 1, no Quad 2. Quad 3 are undefeated, Quad 4 undefeated, and they are ranked ahead of schools like North Carolina. I understand North Carolina is 1-1 in Quad 1, but McNeese is 0-1. So I'm just confused. I'm genuinely confused. I could sit here and nitpick this all day. UMass Lowell in the American East, they are 40. They were previously 44th. They're now 50th. They're ahead of teams like Hofstra, NC State, App State, Purdue, Fort Wayne, My point is, and Purdue Fort Wayne is ranked ahead of Villanova and Butler. Villanova went through Atlantis and won 3-0. I know they had losses to Drexel and Penn and St. Joe's, but again, I think ultimately my point is it's too early to be sitting here and talking about how important this is to a team's resume when I think it's a great tool. Again, I think it's something that gives us a barometer, and you honestly can take your own, you can take a look at it and kind of make your own judgment based on what you think about teams. It does not influence the top 25 in any way for me. I don't sit here and be like, well, this team lost to this quad, so I'm going to put them there, right? I think this is a great barometer for what you think a quality of wins schedule is, which is essentially what it is, right? We're not seeing anything outrageous here when it comes to like, okay, there's a team that's, 0-4 in quad 4 and they're really high up there. We're not. Like, obviously, when you get further down into the list, you've got teams like High Point, Wichita State that are ranked ahead of teams like Michigan State, who has had a tough year. Seton Hall is another one. Seton Hall and St. Joseph's are 85th and 86th, ranked ahead of Wichita State and High Point. And I'm trying to find another example that's a ridiculous record. Michigan at 4-5 is 93rd in the net. They're ranked ahead of teams like Kansas State, who's 7-2, who are 6-0 at home, 0-1 in quad 1. They had a quad 2 loss, which I think influences some of that as well. Again, as you get further down, it starts to get really confusing. Like Maryland is 185th in the net. They are ahead of teams like Penn, who I guess got a quad 2 win for the Villanova win earlier in the year. So, and obviously I think that was technically before these came out. So what am I saying? I'm saying that I think this is a great tool, but I'm saying that this is a little bit too early for this to be available to the public. I think this is something that needs to have more time to adjust, which ultimately, as we've seen with places like Ken Pom, Bartorvik, there are preseason determinations that go into those factors, and Ken Pom doesn't even remove them until I think early to mid-January. I was wrong about the in-season tournament. Let's talk about it. So, look, preseason, I was pretty brash. I'm trying to figure out a way to put it, about just how I thought guys were going to care about it, how I thought the league was going to get behind it, how I thought it was going to play out. Look, at the end of the day, these games have been incredible. Like, minus Bucks-Knicks, which was 146-122 in the East quarterfinals. That was the matchup of the 1 and the 4 seed. Other than that game, which was fairly competitive at some point, but then just Dame and Giannis were able to take over and completely change that game. Pacers Celtics was incredible, right? Tyrese Halliburton on a national stage was able to put on a clinic. I know Boston, obviously, coming into it was probably the team that could have, we would call more talented, obviously, as a potential NBA Finals team. I think Indiana is underrated this year. I think they're going to be an incredible team. Where they really got out ahead, talking about Tyrese Halliburton specifically, where they really got their bump was when you get him to create. I know he had 26 points, but 13 assists. When he's creating offense for you in a really dynamic way, getting guys like Buddy Hield open for 21 points. The Pacers had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys in double figures. I mean, and then Benedict Mathurin off the bench with only 27 minutes. Whenever you're getting guys like that to play, and you're not even reaching down your bench to play, guys like Isaiah Jackson, Jordan Nwora, Jarris Walker, you're playing your best 8 in this tournament. Look, the Pacers deserve to win against Boston. I know that their offense, again, when it's super dynamic, it looks really good. On Boston's end of things, like 32 from Tatum, 30 from Brown. I mean, you're getting what you're getting from there. Derek White had 18. Drew Holiday's not exactly been providing the best offensive production for Boston. I know that Indiana has some really tough defenders in the backcourt, and held Drew to a minus 15 plus minus, but. Look, I was wrong. At the end of the day, these games are really, really competitive, and I'm not going to sit here and go through every single result with you. But on the other side, the Pelicans beating the Kings. The Kings are I think, one of the teams in this tournament that had a very good shot at winning it. Herb Jones really showed some offensive production that we haven't seen from him yet. He had 23 points. He had 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 blocks, only 1 turnover. Herb Jones is going to be a big difference maker for New Orleans, especially if they're going to keep their guys healthy. Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson, talking about seeing engagement from guys. There was a press conference, I believe it was Tuesday, where those two, they were asked about, what they would do or how they would celebrate $500,000. And I've never seen those two laugh like that together that hard. So, there's clearly some engagement there. What the extra $500,000 would do for any guy in the league of any stature, I mean, that's got to be at least feel like a good surmountable amount of money. To get 27 minutes from Zion Williamson, I know it was only 10 points, but for them to win with Brandon Ingram being their leading scorer is a positive, promising sign, and they're just getting Trey Murphy back. He's getting his feet wet with 29 minutes. Their bench is really deep. They didn't even play Jordan Hawkins in this one, Kira Lewis either. So, this is a really, really deep Pelicans team that I think matches up against the Kings really well. They have versatile defenders they can throw at the Kings' wings very, very efficiently. When you look at the Kings side of things, 30 from De'Aaron Fox, you're going to expect that. 26 from Sabonis. He had a double-double. He actually had a triple-double, he had 10 assists there. I missed that. He's facilitating really well. Keegan Murray, I think I want to continue to see some good offensive production from. He was really great from 3, though, 4 from 8, which is what we expect from him, so really good offensive performance there. Overall, I think this is showing that there are teams like the Pelicans that can use these games as really, really good firepower, right? Think of it as like coal on the fire when it comes to their, future in the season here, right? Obviously, you're going to have to keep Zion Williamson healthy. You're going to have to keep Brandon Ingram healthy, which so far those guys have been, which has been really impressive, and I think it speaks volumes to the kind of team they were. The game of the quarterfinals, though, that Kings-Pelicans was a 2-3 seed. Pacers-Celtics was a 2-3. And then Lakers-Suns, the 1-4. The Lakers 106, Suns 103. I know there was a controversial call there at the end with Austin Reeves potentially not having possession of the ball when they were calling a timeout. Look, I think it was, what do they call the term in football? Especially, it's like it has to be insurmountable evidence or something like that. I don't remember. But look, at the end of the day, the Lakers showed up. They're getting production from their depth. I think that's really, really important to know. Guys are starting to feel their roles, even if it's not in a scoring production way. Cam Reddish only had 4 points. Taurean Prince only had 5. D'Angelo Russell only had 8, which I think if he had had a little bit more of an offensive productive game, he was 3 of 11 from the field, so obviously could have shot them out of this one. But Darvin Ham played him 24 minutes. So controlling the bleeding there a little bit. Austin Reeves off the bench with 20. So you're starting to see guys fill their role really well. There's guys that are doing things that aren't showing up on the stat sheet, like Max Christie, who's really, really good defender when he's in. He's able to defend Eric Gordon, able to defend Grayson Allen, Devin Booker. He's able to defend these guys really, really well. Phoenix obviously had a really good trio offensively that kept them in this game. Kevin Durant had what I would call almost a vintage performance based on everything we've seen from him recently. Look, I mean, this is 35-year-old Kevin Durant who tore an Achilles not that long ago. So 31 points is impressive from him. Grayson Allen had 21 on 4 of 8 from 3, 5 from 5 from the free throw line. So, of course, blistering hot performance there. And then Devin Booker with 21. Look, he's starting to do a lot more for their offense. He had 11 rebounds, which led them in rebounding, which is nuts. He had 6 assists, which led them in assists. The 7 turnovers, like when he's your primary playmaker, Kevin Durant had 5 as well. When he's your primary playmaker, you're not going to be as efficient, and they don't really have a primary playmaker, which I think is going to ultimately end up being one of their downfalls as we get later into the postseason later this year, obviously assuming they keep a top 5-6 seed, which I think they will. Phoenix is going to need a playmaker, so I think they'll be in play for somebody either in the buyout market or a small trade or something of that nature. I don't think there's a ton of point guard availability right now, but even an Alex Caruso, if they can find a way to pull that off, Chicago obviously is bleeding. I mean, they're just bleeding out, and they're waiting for the season to be over. This team looks abysmal as they lose Zach LaVine for 4 to 6 more weeks, I believe, is that's correct. Look, the in-season tournament's been great. Again, where I want to say I was wrong is that this level of competition is there. I am caring about the NBA more than I ever thought I would, which, look, I tell you guys that not from a place of I never cared about it before. I 100% watched games throughout the week, even in November, even in December, right? I'm not the person it was for. But for it to be competitive on a weeknight where college basketball is putting on some games, they are putting on some incredible matchups. Just this week alone, North Carolina, UConn. Just the end of last week, UConn played Kansas at Allen Fieldhouse. Just to name a few, right? We have the Jimmy V Classic. You have the CBS Sports Classic coming up next week. You have all these incredible non-conference matchups. And the average college basketball fan doesn't care. That's the craziest thing, right? So if they're pulling in audiences of, don't get me wrong, I think these Thursday night football games being incredibly awful, perfect example when the Lakers-Pelicans game is going on Thursday, 9 p.m. as I'm recording this Thursday morning. I'm not going to be able to do a best bet segment today because you won't hear this probably in time by the time the games come on. Well, the other game comes on at 5 o'clock today, Eastern, because of it being played in Las Vegas on the neutral site. But specifically Thursday Night Football, the Patriots, the god-awful My Team Patriots, are playing the Steelers, who have been terrible even despite Matt Canada's firing. So I know this is a football podcast, but I keep up with it pretty well. That's going to help, I think. That's going to help these terrible matchups. And then obviously with the Monday Night Football thing, this won't affect it here, but those games have been terrible all year. Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, guess what? They slotted this perfectly, right? There's going to be no college football on, and I want to make sure I'm correct on that because I know the bowl season starts sooner rather than later, but there shouldn't be any bowl games on whatsoever. I think the first game is like the Myrtle Beach Bowl in a few weeks. Let's take a look here. The bowl game schedule, Army-Navy is at 3 o'clock on Saturday. The NBA in-season tournament game is at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on ABC, ESPN2. So there's no problems there, right? Bowls don't start until Saturday, December 16th. There you go, right? So the NBA in-season tournament did this perfectly. They slotted this game in specifically on a Saturday where there's no college football, there's no NFL. The only competition you're having to go against is going to be college basketball. And, the slate this weekend is going to be crazy. I just want to put that out there, right? So, like, Friday's slate is pretty lackluster from a conference or from a Division I standpoint, just all across the board. But Saturday's slate is insane. You have Tulane at Mississippi State, Illinois at Tennessee, that's a ranked matchup, Kentucky at Penn, South Carolina, East Carolina, Cal at Butler, Troy at Dayton. Let's see, I'm obviously missing a bunch here, but as we scroll down, Texas plays, Duke plays, Wisconsin at Arizona. That's a top 25 matchup. Again, I'm just skimming these off the top. The entire college basketball world plays on Saturday. Gonzaga at Washington is also a really good game as well. So again, without diving deep into too much of it, look, the NBA in-season tournament, I think they did it right. I think they slotted it in properly. I've never seen as much engagement on Twitter, even from the NBA Twitter heads, about what's happening in the tournament. These guys caring. The Boston Celtics are crying out loud playing the Bulls a few weeks, the game before the Pacers Celtics to guarantee themselves their spot in their group cup. They were intentionally fouling Andre Drummond because of a point differential thing. They're up 30. They needed to have a 32-point lead or 30, whatever it is. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. The point is the teams are being more strategic about this. I do think there needs to be a balance of it a little bit where I think they need to play the same teams every year. I think they need to solidify the groups. I don't care if it's divisions. I don't care if you add a second group. I've seen that around places. But I think they need to figure out a way to make it competitive and create organic rivalry where if the Kings and Pelicans can play every year, that would be awesome, like in a group stage or something like that. I know that's not how it worked out this year, but as an example, right, Pacers Celtics was an incredible matchup. Lakers Suns is always going to be really fun because it's in division. And I think they need to balance it where if there's a way to not have a team playing at a certain time and then the Celtics can know how much their point differential is because, when you have 72 assistants and staff in the NBA, somebody can be tracking the point differential from another team. And then there was teams like the Nets, I think, that didn't have any idea what point differential they needed. So it's just not fair, right? I don't think it's a fair playing field there, which, call it what it is. It's a scheduling problem. But look, I think the NBA otherwise did it right. I'm willing to eat my crow on it because at the end of the day, it's been really fun. I've been able to watch these matchups. Obviously, shout out to YouTube TV for the recording and League Pass for recording and going back and watching things. Makes it a whole lot easier. Basketball, trying to balance multiple screens and multiple games. I wish you could multi-box into NBA games and 2 college games especially, but just can't, unfortunately, right now. Hopefully YouTube TV thinks about that in the future. I will make a prediction really quick. just to be safe on when this comes out, and it'll obviously be on record at that point. And then obviously I can't get out a prediction with a bet, with like a spread and all that stuff for the championship game in time. But I'll give you, I think the Pacers are going to beat the Bucks. I think they have a more balanced offense. I think the Bucks, which will be really strong against the Bucks, pretty subpar defense this year. They've been bottom 10 in the league in most defensive metrics for most of the year. Call that what you want with Damian Lillard. The Lakers-Pelicans, I think the Pelicans have a lot of defensive versatility, but not enough of a big man presence that will, I think, help with Anthony Davis and Jared Vanderbilt, Jackson Hayes, and some of the deep rotation that the Lakers can play from that front court's place. So I think the Lakers win a close one against the Pelicans. I think the Pacers beat the Bucks 5 to 10 points. I think it'll be a good game throughout. I don't see it being necessarily a blowout. Lakers-Pacers in the finals. I don't care what the hat says. I think the Lakers are the best team in this tournament right now. I think they're starting to play their best basketball at the right time. Assuming that my prediction in the semifinals is right on Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, which I will try my darndest to be watching it live. If not, I'll watch it after, record it and watch it the next morning. But Lakers-Pacers, I think the Lakers can take care of the Pacers because they'll have enough of, like I said, a strong defensive identity to beat guys like Tyrese Halliburton, or at least give him some problems. Guys like Max Christie, Austin Reeves have been playing really good basketball lately. I think that'll be an intriguing matchup there. Tyrese is probably going to get his regardless, but I think there's enough scoring firepower from the Lakers that I don't think that ultimately matters in the grand scheme of a head-to-head, really competitive game. A lot more experience on the Lakers side of things. I know that necessarily doesn't always matter in the NBA, but guys that have played in big games, exciting games in the regular season, obviously that territory is new for everyone involved, but I think the Lakers right now are the better team, although the Pacers have been really, really fun to watch, and I need to definitely try to do a pod with Alex Golden again because the Pacers are awesome, and I know we did that pod last year. It felt like it was almost a year early based on everything they're doing now, but I really, really enjoy watching the Pacers and Tyrese Halliburton playing his way into best Pacer of all time territory. Don't say I told you so, but regardless, again, NBA in-season tournament, the name, I think they're going to work on the name. Maybe it's going to be sponsored next year. It'll be the Sprite tournament or the Sprite challenge or something like that. I'm just throwing out hypotheticals here, but I think it was really, really fun so far, and obviously, can't wait to watch the East and West semifinals. All right, a little bit of a shorter pod today. Thank you guys so much for all the support over the last couple of weeks. All the new listeners, I've seen you, I've heard you, I appreciate you. If you're watching this on YouTube, like, comment, and hit that subscribe button because that's how you get notified, and there's a little bell so you can be notified anytime I post a podcast or any video, right? We want to be engaged. I want to see those subscriber numbers come up. It would greatly appreciate I would greatly appreciate it and help support the show. If you're on Apple, Spotify, Google, any of our lovely podcast platforms, don't forget to drop a rating and a 5-star review. We greatly appreciate that. Updates from me throughout the weeks at Trevor Everett for any live game coverage, at 2-Pointers for any other basketball content you're looking for on this page on every social media platform. Don't forget to use code 2-Pointers, $20 off your first purchase, SeatGeek.com, or link in the top of the description will take you there to input that code. Tried to figure out anything else I could add here in the last few minutes for the 30-minute mark. Shout out to Caitlin Clark for hitting 30,000, that's crazy, 3,000 points in her NCAA women's college career. There's been some really great stuff in the NCAA women's game this year. LSU is turned into a soap opera. NC State's up to number 3 in the AP poll with 2 top 10 upsets. Look, it's just been an incredible year in basketball all across every level. Been a whole lot of fun. By the way, I went to App State Auburn. If you didn't see on Twitter, App State, I got to see my first court rush, which I thought was really cool, or court storm. I think we called it #court storm. It was incredible to see a team like a Bruce Pearl-led team like Auburn to come into a place like App State. The home center hasn't had an upset like that really ever. It was their first one of its kind at that new building. They have only played 3 sellouts in that arena. For it being 8,200 seats for a school that cares a lot more about football, it was a really cool environment, unbelievable atmosphere. Students really showed out, and deservingly so. They beat Auburn at home there in Boone. Incredible team down there in the Sun Belt. Obviously, JMU's been the story, but they've beaten 2 really incredible opponents. They had 1 loss early in the year. I don't remember exactly who it was to that I was kind of questionable with, but I think they beat UNCW by like almost 30. They beat Auburn at home. Look, this App State team is going to be an incredible team in the Sun Belt, and if JMU does what they're doing, and they don't win the Sun Belt, like with 2 to 3 losses as on the season as a whole. As of right now, they're what we talked about earlier. I think 7-0. They're pacing really well to run the slate. Anything can happen, but if App State wants to get in the tournament, they should win it. Jim, you can probably get in it as an automatic or as a at large, right? It's totally possible. I know the Sun Belt isn't always the lead that's going to do that, but we've seen it in the MAC. We've seen it, or not in the MAC, excuse me. We've seen it in the A10. We've seen it in other leagues, similarly, the WAC, right? That kind of thing. So just an incredible week, incredible month of college basketball in the NBA. Super, super fun. We'll keep up with everything here on the Two Pointers Podcast. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This has been the Two Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett. Hit that subscribe button.